to Republicans and, you know, making sure that they got audits and, you know, just unbelievable. And smugly answering the questions about what happened, blaming it on some low-level employee that's demonstrably false, and then turning around and saying, oh, it's a phony scandal, we don't want to. And the complicit media that goes along with Barack Obama and the Democrats pretty much all the time has given him a pass. They took his smug answers, they gave him the what for about 2 weeks, and now they seem to have moved on to whatever else they want to apologize for him for. And it's extraordinarily frustrating. But it really is no different than the way the Democrats ran Ohio government in the short period of time that they had control. You know, the difference between intimidating and harassing Tea Party organizations and liberty groups and conservative organizations who are expressing their constitutional right to be part of this process and infuse life and energy into this party as we have, is in targeting them, having the federal government target them for some kind of special, you know, extra scrutiny. That reminds me a whole lot of the way that the Strickland administration treated. Remember Joe the plumber? Before he became a candidate, he was just a guy like you and me. And he went out on the street, and he was the guy who actually got Barack Obama to say, "I want to spread the wealth around." Remember that? And they didn't like him at all, and that caused them a lot of problems and started to bring to light what we were actually dealing with and all this open change nonsense that he was talking about. We started to find out what his real agenda was because Joe the plumber walked up to him and asked him a question, and he was, for once, you know, taken off guard in front of members of the media, and he answered a question that he probably shouldn't have answered in the way he probably shouldn't have answered it, and he had a couple of bad days of press after that. And so the folks in the Ohio government, and the Ohio governor's office, you know, directed people in their administration to go after Joe the plumber. And embarrassing and personal and confidential documents about his life and about his business were released to the media. That's what they do. That's who they are. This is who we're up against, folks. And so, you know, look at the things that are going on right now that Democrats have absolutely nothing to say about and no apologies for with Mayor Filner in San Diego and Elliot Spitzer, who's apparently looks like he's going to win. He's going to get elected comptroller of New York. Now, at least Anthony Weiner isn't going to get elected mayor of New York, but does anybody remember Mark Dan? Remember him? Don't the things that you hear about from those Democrats remind you of Mark Dan? And unapologetically, Democrats and liberals in this state, you know, stride through these scandals and don't get the type of media scrutiny that we get. Every time I read a story about Mayor Filner, and now it's gotten to the point where he's finally stepping down, I just want to see one word in there. I want to see them tell us when they write these stories that he's a Democrat, and they never do. There's a pile about this high of complaints about, you know, you can look at and say, if that were a Republican, can you imagine how the press would be treating it? This is just one of the myriad of those examples, but one very frustrating one, and they'll never point that out. You know, one of the biggest scandals and corruption in the United States of America is going on right now, and it came out of the Ohio Treasurer's office when a guy named Kevin Boyce, who's a Democrat, was appointed by Ted Strickland to serve as treasurer for the last 2 years of that administration. There's a 21-count federal indictment, all on felonies, of a gentleman who actually, I'm not making any of this up, went and became the finance director for the city of Chicago for Rahm Emanuel, who, of course, as you know, was Barack Obama's chief of staff and a Democrat member of Congress before he went on to take over the city of Chicago, and what a wonderful job he seems to be doing there. But this gentleman was our investment director here in Ohio, and the Chicago Tribune is covering this story, you know, pretty vigorously. And in one of the stories the other day, Mayor Emanuel had to answer questions, and he said, well, this guy came to me very highly recommended by the treasurer of Ohio. And I read the stories that are showing up here and there in the newspapers in Ohio, and reading that, of course, they never mention he's a Democrat, ever. They never even mention his name in a lot of cases. They say, oh, former state official, you know, involved in. Again, if this had been a Republican, that would have been the headline, no question about it. And so we at the state party have decided to try to call a little bit of attention to this guy. His name is Kevin Boyce. he told the newspaper when we had a little press conference about this last week that he was shocked to learn about the behavior of the gentleman who had worked for him when he was treasurer. Except for that, then we found out that the FBI was in his office investigating this back in 2010 when he was still there. So I don't know how you were shocked about something for 3 years, but he appears to want us to believe that, and we're not going to let him off the hook. You know, one of the things I think Republicans need to start learning to do is fighting back, not allowing these Democrats to get away with their glib answers, not allowing Democrats to, talk to the media and have the media say, dismiss our concerns, dismiss the fact that they're violating the Constitution, dismiss the fact that Barack Obama just decided that he was going to decide when a law passed by Congress was going to be implemented. He doesn't have authority over the implementation date of a duly passed piece of legislation by the United States Congress, but unilaterally decided, well, we just want to implement this. And of course, I'm speaking to the employer mandate part of Obamacare, which, if that in and of itself doesn't tell you what a disastrous piece of legislation it is, he won't even implement the legislation he pushed for. Remember this bill that we had to pass to find out what was in it? Well, now we're finding out what was in it, and even the Democrats don't like it. Even Barack Obama doesn't want it. Nobody likes it. So we're fighting against these folks. This is what we're up against. The only people who are going to raise their voices and clamor and set our hair on fire and make sure they listen to us until they finally write a story, until we finally get our side of the story out there, is us. That's it. People in this room, people at the party. That's what we've got to do. So when you know about things, or you hear about things, or you're concerned about messaging, or you don't know why we're not pushing back hard on an issue, or think we need to be following up on something, call us. That's what we're here for. So this is what we want to be hearing. How can we do this? And like I said, I was frustrated by the Romney campaign because they thought that there were folks in Boston who knew how to win campaigns in Ohio better than we can. Well, I've been winning campaigns in Ohio here for a long time. I've run 4 statewide campaigns, won them all. I've run 2 other local campaigns, won those 2. One of them was a 9-way Republican primary that we won for a member of Congress up this way, a gentleman named Bob Gibbs, when he ran in 2010. I don't know much. I'm not that good at a whole lot of things, just ask my wife. I can't fix anything around the house, I've never been a particularly gifted athlete, there's not much I can really do. I can win campaigns. It's something I actually have been able to do over the years. And I'm proud to do it. So I can't take that kind of frustration with me about the way a national campaign was run, and then come to Columbus and decide, well, we here in Columbus know how to do things better than you guys do. I've never run a campaign in Medina County before. I don't know how to win up here. You guys do. You've done it many times. You'll continue to do it. And so we need to be working with you. I need to be listening to you about the kinds of things that we can do to make sure that we're all working together and listening to the feedback of the people in the field who have been doing this for decades, and making sure that we get Republicans elected. We had a chance. We took a big, mighty swing at the election in 2012. At the top of the ticket, we had a pretty major disappointment. Like I alluded to a little bit ago, we swung and we missed in 2008. We swung and we missed again in 2012. We swing and miss again in 2016. That's strike 3. I don't know if we can survive past that. We can't do that. We have to get this state ready to contribute to a national election and get a Republican elected into the White House. I was lucky enough I serve on the Republican National Committee now in this new capacity, and so I was lucky enough to be in Boston last week for the RNC meetings. And there were some good conversations that happened there. And Chris Christie, who's the governor of New Jersey, came and spoke with us. Regardless of what you think of Chris Christie, Governor Christie he's a bombastic, and he's a opinionated Republican who is going to get reelected with about 73% of the vote in one of the bluest states in the country. Like I said, set aside personal opinions about Governor Christie, he said something to me that I really needed to hear. And I found myself for the last several months going around and meeting with groups like you and talking about 2012. I keep talking about what went wrong in 2012. And he said, during his speech, he said, guys, what happened in 2012? We lost. Get over it. Now it's time to start focusing on 2013 and 2014 and what we can do to win. Now there's nothing wrong with looking back on an election like 2012 and try to realize some of the mistakes we made, right? We should all learn from, those mistakes and try to move forward and make things better. Because ultimately the idea is to win and bring folks together. And when you lose an election, people are frustrated. Everyone has a different theory about why it was that we lost, or what some exit polls told us about who wasn't there for us, or how we could have messaged better, or whatnot. And I spent a lot of time after that election trying to find out what was that one thing that we could have done. What was that one area where we fell down? And the truth is that the campaign had macro problems. If it didn't, we wouldn't have just lost one swing state. We lost them all. Now, I cared very much about carrying Ohio. That was kind of like my charge. And I believed that we could, and I believed that we would. And on election night, looking at the numbers statewide and realizing what we thought we would anticipate in terms of turnout, I told our governor that we were going to carry Ohio. I said it's going to be very close. But by the time it's all done, we'll have a big enough lead that when the Democrats cheat their way through all the provisional ballots, we'll still be able to hang on to a very, very narrow victory in Ohio. So I told him I believed it was going to happen. And then about 2 hours later, Fox News called the state for Obama. And I was as stunned as anyone else, and then my phone rang. And our governor, who was upstairs in the suite at the hotel downtown Columbus, where we all work, said, hey, come up here. So I got on the elevator kind of sheepishly and went up to his suite, walked in the door, and came around the corner, and there was Governor Kasich sitting there. I looked over at me and he said, what the hell happened? And I wasn't sure. I hadn't had a chance to really look at any numbers yet. I just said, Governor, I don't know, but we're going to go and we're going to regroup and we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. And on election night in 2014, I'm not having that conversation with him again. I'm not going to do it. And partly because if he calls and if we lost, I'm just not going upstairs. Just kidding. Sort of. We'll get in the car and drive to Canada or something. But also because, I need to feel like we've done everything we possibly can. You can lose on election night. It happens sometimes. You can lose on election night knowing that you did everything you possibly could and not feel so bad about it. When you lose on election night knowing that you could have done a lot of things better and differently, that's tough to live with. That's tough to swallow. So I'm out meeting with, in many cases, introducing myself to people who are activists in this party. Our county organizations and groups like yours are the absolute lifeblood of our party and the things that we do. Nancy, I'm glad that you're in your new position, and good luck.
Thank you.
Being a chairman of an organization of a group of people who are as diverse in their opinions and their beliefs is a challenge. But it's an honor and it's a challenge that we have to take on, understanding that I want this party to be the party of a diversity of opinions and ideas. That's what I want. I don't want to ever turn out and be like the Democrats. The way the Democrats are, if you're not in lockstep with them, they don't have anything to do with it. You have to subscribe to groupthink. If we're going to be the party of individual responsibility and personal responsibility of individual rights, we have to welcome in people who have divergent opinions. And then we have to discuss them. And we have to hammer out the best possible working solution to solve the problems that are facing us. It is our conservative principles that are working to make Ohio better. It is those principles of lower taxes and balanced budgets and a real focus on job creation that are helping to turn the state around from the disaster that the Democrats created for us from 2006 to 2010. There's no question about it. By implementing the conservative principles, we even heard, again, bring up Governor Christie again. He told the same story about New Jersey. Showed up, the Democrats who were in lockstep with the labor unions had helped run up a $7-8 billion deficit just like ours. The way they wanted to solve the problem was raise taxes during a recession, the worst thing you could possibly do. Just keep on taxing everybody so they can keep on spending money, borrow money, spend into oblivion, and it wasn't gonna work. He came into New Jersey, okay? I'm not talking about Oklahoma or Utah here. Like I said, one of the bluest Democrat, blue-collar union states in the country, and he took on the teachers' unions, and he moved to cut taxes. And when his legislature came to him and they said, no, we're gonna raise taxes, he said, well, you send me that bill and I'll veto it, and you keep sending it back and I'll veto it every time you put a tax increase in there. And even in New Jersey, folks are starting to realize that it was tax cuts and balanced budgets, and folks believing that their government actually maybe had a square head on its shoulders, that started to get folks wanting to invest again in this country and get people back to work and hire employees and repair the damage that had been done for years, in that case, decades of neglect, and what the Democrats were doing. You want to see what Democratic leadership looks like? Drive up to Detroit. And take a look at what happens when you kowtow to unions and continue to borrow your way into oblivion while people flee the community and your tax base shrinks, and you kick the can down the road again and again. And I've talked to mayors, I've talked to Republicans, I've talked to people across the state and the country who tell me that their communities aren't that far off from where Detroit is now. We cannot, this is unsustainable, we cannot continue on this path. I was proud of our governor when, I think late last week, he talked about we need to take seriously this notion of a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution. Why can't the federal government live the way the Ohio government has to live? Why can't they? And if they had to do that, then bye-bye these big, massive spending programs like Obamacare and other things. These things they couldn't happen. We couldn't do them. And there's no way. So that's the type of thing that we need to be fighting for. That's the type of thing that we need to do. We need to follow that example and look for opportunities to start to make some sense about the way we do things in Washington. Again, Washington's a different place. It's you suspend reality when you walk, when you cross the district boundaries, and they live in an existence that just makes no sense. So those are the things I want our party to be about. I want our party to be about inclusion. I want our party to be about getting young people involved. When I leave here this morning, I'm going to drive up to Cleveland. I'm speaking to the Ohio Black Republicans Association. And whenever I speak to groups of African Americans, I find myself defending our past, the party of Abraham Lincoln. That's who created the Republican Party, the great emancipator. We are the party that, without Republican leadership, that fought for the Civil Rights Act of 1957, and the Democrats voted it down. And then without 80% Republican support in 1964, it never would have passed. Even the Democrats want to take credit for it now. We are that party. In Ohio, we're the party that elected the first ever African American to statewide office. And Bob Duncan was elected to the Supreme Court as a Republican in 1968, and then was appointed by President Nixon to the federal bench. And then the first statewide constitutional office holder in Ohio was a Republican guy named Ken Blackwell, who went on to be the first ever major party candidate for governor in this state. The first African American lieutenant governor was a Republican. The first African American state treasurer was in Ohio, and was a Republican. The second African American state treasurer of Ohio was a Republican. You know how many? Does anyone have a guess? I'm going to give a quick quiz here. Anyone know how many total in the history of time African Americans, Ohio Democrats, have elected to statewide office? Anybody know the answer?
Zero.
Correct. Whoever said zero is absolutely right. And so I'll do that a little bit, again today, defend our past. But I also want to talk about our future. The future of this state, the future of this country. We've got future leaders like Clarence Mingo, who's a Franklin County auditor, who's going to be up here today, actually speaking after I do as the keynote up there, is an African American conservative who is pro-family, who is pro-life, who is unabashed about taking his campaign into black churches. And in 2010, he campaigned in urban communities And in a year where it's very good for us statewide, every single one of our office holders who were elected, or statewide office holders, lost Franklin County. Every one of them. John Kasich, who's from there. Dave Yost, who's from there. John Husted, Josh Mandel, who scored huge victories that year. That all of them lost Franklin County. But Clarence Mingo won Franklin County that night. Even with that, all that happening, those other races at the top of the ticket. So this is a guy who can really help lead us, into some communities, into some areas who we need to stop neglecting. We need to start bringing our message to. And it's not a matter of compromising our values so we can go and reach out to other voters. No. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. What it is we got to start talking to them about what our values are. We got to start talking to them about, well, there was this historic election, and certainly understand why there was such incredible enthusiasm and turnout to help Barack Obama carry communities like Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati and Toledo by such huge margins. What's it done for you? Still 20-25% unemployment in some of these communities. How is it helping you? And a Republican agenda to actually create jobs, who actually first started talking about stimulus? Anyone know who first started using the word stimulus? It was Ronald Reagan. Was talking about stimulating the economies in these inner cities by bringing jobs and opportunity. We're the party of opportunity for everybody. That's us. We're the ones who want that. And it's not about government handouts. It's about a hand up. It's about helping someone find work and understand that our way and our vision is just better for the country. It's sharing our ideas in a way that we kind of have stopped trying. With young people, we lose on college campuses, and the Democrats they take us